Hello, everyone. This is the first lecture for the topic of deviance and social control. And as we did with the other chapters, I will break the lectures up into 10, 12, 13, 14-minute sections, and then there'll be an activity. This is actually a pretty short chapter relative to some of the others, and there's a lot of theory in this chapter. This one, I would argue, is probably the most theory. So it's really about explaining this phenomena. So deviance and social control. What is deviance? Deviance from a sociological perspective simply refers to the response when a social norm is violated. So from a sociological perspective, remember from chapter 1, there's no such thing as right or wrong. Things are just patterns. Behaviors are just behaviors. It's culture that decides if something is right or wrong. So deviance is the fancy word that we give for this judgment, for this, yes, for a judgment of a norm, back to chapter 2, that is different from everybody else. So we talked about how deviance is a response. This is the word we give when somebody does something different. It's the reaction. We declare them deviant. We can respond to somebody's behavior, like they drive too fast, they drink too much, they sit on the floor, they have sex out of wedlock. Or we can refer to deviance as their way of being or a characteristic. So people who are disabled, maybe they're of a race and everybody else in the room is white and they're not white. They're tattooed, they're old, whatever. They're Democrats when everybody else is Republican, some sort of characteristic. So it can either be a verb, a thing that they do, or a way that they are. What is considered deviant is relative to time. This is a very important point. It's relative to time, place, and culture. Deviance changes. Remember, it's a social construct. So what might be considered deviant, say in 1920, or 22, I forget when prohibition was, right? It was against the law to drink alcohol, is no longer deviant today. Or I'm in this old ladies organization, and in previous generations, the women all wore gloves. We don't wear gloves anymore. Or the president, there was a dress code. She always had to wear dresses. Well, now we have presidents who wear jeans, right? Once upon a time, jeans would not have been allowed, but today it's okay. So it's relative to time. What is considered inappropriate in one context? I think I would guess you all know this stuff, right? But I'm putting the sociological terms onto stuff you already know. So what would be considered deviant in one place is not in another, like wearing, I don't know, like wearing a bikini top at a beach, but you don't wear a bikini top to church. What's considered acceptable in one culture is not considered acceptable in another culture. So women covering their hair, right? I mean, it's okay for women to cover their hair in our culture, but it's not okay for them not to cover their hair in other cultures, right? So it's all relative. And this is what I mean about deviance being a social construct. It's the group at that particular place, at that particular point of time, that decides what's appropriate, what's not. When we declare something deviant, it acts as a form of social control. So if we were all together, I might ask you, is it a compliment to be called a delinquent or to be called deviant? No, it acts as a way to say you are not following the rules. You need to change your behavior. And in theory, at least one of the theories says, is that we don't like to be different than the group, that when we're called out for being different, we're going to change our behavior. Right? That's one theory. We'll talk about that in another slide. It's a response to limited opportunities. This is a fancy way of saying desperate people do desperate things. That sometimes we have to, or we feel that we have to break the rules. We have to do something different because we have no other options, right? Like I would follow those rules, but I simply can't in this situation. I'm trying to get to the emergency room, so I speed, or I have to feed my kids, so I take food from the grocery store. Or it's desperate people do desperate things, right? It's a method of exploitation of the powerless by the powerful. What this means is the rules are not fair. They are not evenly distributed. They're not evenly enforced. That people who have more power are the ones who are writing the rules, and they will write rules or do write rules, or there are many instances where they write rules that protect the behaviors of the powerful. And in essence, they're criminalizing behaviors of the less powerful. There's a cartoon on my Facebook feed that says that when the consequences are fines and fees for breaking the rules, that is an indication that because fines and fees don't hurt wealthy people like the same way that they hurt poor people. So it's the idea. A perfect example actually is like mandatory sentences for cocaine and crack cocaine, right? That the mandatory sentence for crack cocaine is longer than powder cocaine. Powder cocaine is more expensive, more pure, more likely to be found at the top of that triangle that you've seen before. And who writes the rules? It's not the powerless, it's the powerful, right? And it's about norms and predictability. Way back in chapter 2, I hope I said this in chapter 2. Why are norms important? Norms are important because they make life predictable. Deviance is all about unpredictability, right? It's all about calling out and enforcing social predictability. So when someone violates that predictability, that makes us a little uncomfortable. So we have all of these mechanisms, all cultures do. I don't just mean to like, not just us, all cultures have all these mechanisms to promote and predict predictability, because unpredictability is change. And then, additionally, some groups are more eager for change than other groups. Right? So some groups will be like, cheer on that unpredictability and that social change. And other groups are like, no, we like the way the system works. So a really important thing to consider whenever there's discussion of social change is to consider who wants that change and who doesn't want that change. So the next question is, why do certain groups benefit from the rules? Who is benefiting from these rules? Who would benefit from the rules being changed? Okay, next slide. I'm trying to watch my time. This is, I think, a pretty quick one. So Deviance theory, how we explain, so I'm going to use the phrase, why people break the rules. How we explain why people break the rules. And we all do it. We all wonder, like, why is that person, okay, falls into two basic camps. One camp would fall under the psychologist or the sociobiologist camp, and the other are the sociologists, right? So this is one of those big differences between psychology and sociology. The psychologists argue that people break the rules because there's something within them. They're broken or they're different. That people break the rules because it's kind of like they can't help it. That it's a personal thing. That people break the rules because there's something wrong with them as a person, right? And this perspective looks to things like, one classic example, and this one is mentioned, I think, in my psychology class for the human growth, is it's called the Xyy Theory. So back in, I forget when it was, but there was a discovery that men in prison there was a higher percentage of men in prison who had XYY gene. You remember, men only are supposed to have one Y, X and Y. So the theory is that this additional Y made men additionally aggressive, right? And so this became known as the super gene. I forget the term for it, but the criminal gene. And it was used to explain why some men were more likely to be aggressive and violent, because they had this additional Y gene. I think it's called the super criminal. There's like CSIs, and I believe it's mentioned in some superhero comic books, but it's a real thing, this XYY, right? And so this was used to explain that this additional gene so there was something wrong with you, right? And we hear that sometimes in our pop culture. What is wrong with them? The sociological perspective says deviance is not an internal thing. that people don't break the rules or not break the rules because of anything that's in their head. Well, deviance, the reason people break the rules is because of social forces. Again, it goes back to that idea that desperate people do desperate things, that rule following or rule breaking is socially constructed, that there's these social forces, and that in essence, we learn acceptable practices, right? We learn from our peer group. We learn from our parents, life experiences that, I forget where my triangle went, but the idea that the group, phooey, I don't have it anymore. The idea that the group of people that we are surrounded by influence what behaviors we consider to be appropriate. The people and the resources that we're surrounded by enable us or make it difficult for us to meet our needs. If I have access to a job and wages, and I can financially legitimately pay for all of the things that I need, then I follow the rules. But when I need things and I can't get them, I might break the rules to get the things that I need. And we'll talk about it in one of the theories about how sometimes we're socialized with like mixed messages, right? Our socialization experience tells us you need to take care of your kids, you need to buy diapers, you need to buy baby formula. And we're told that stealing is bad. But if I have no money and I have to buy diapers for my baby, how do I do both, right? Do I steal to take care of my babies because my babies are important? I always think of the images we saw during Hurricane Katrina, right? Where people were desperate for food and desperate for water, and they were breaking into Hy-Vee stores, they were breaking into grocery stores. Well, the two values, the two messages, the two cultural norms, take care of your children is what we're expected to do. That's a cultural norm. But don't steal, that's also a cultural norm, but they were clashing. So what do you do, right? Ultimately, we break rules sometimes. Okay, so that's the big fundamental difference. The psychologists say that there's something broken. People that break the rules is because there's something broken. The sociologists say, no, ain't nothing broken. The difference are the cultural messages. So some people break the rules because the cultural messages make it absolutely necessary. Maybe the cultural messages say that it's okay to break the rules. The same thing is we don't break the rules because we're told we're not supposed to, or because we're afraid of some sort of social consequences. And I'm going to stop right there. And when I come back on the next slide, I will talk about one of the first theories. If I can figure out how to stop, of course. I always have this problem.